Welcome to the deep dive, the place where we cut through the noise to get right to the knowledge that matters.
hmm
Today we have a really high stakes situation. It's this terrifying mix of property damage, contractor negligence, and well, long-term health hazards.
That's a bad one.
We're diving into an incredibly complex insurance claim where the insurer's own contractor, their own vendor, turned a simple water issue into 9 months of asbestos and mold exposure for the homeowner.
That's right. This is a deep dive into the raw, really tense conversation between an insured, Lonnie, and his adjuster from National General, Shelley.
Right.
And the issue isn't just, is the house damaged? It's who pays for the 9 months that Lonnie and his family were unknowingly living in a contaminated home, a home contaminated by the people the insurer sent to fix it.
The stakes are just enormous. We need to figure out if the insurer is on the hook for additional living expense, ALE, but retroactively for that whole period of exposure.
And that's the key, right? Even though the insured didn't technically incur those moving costs because nobody told them they were in danger.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to really unpack the specific policy language on ALE, line up this horrifying timeline of exposure, and then bring in the legal hammer of Missouri insurance law to see whose argument actually holds water.
Okay, so let's start with the immediate chaos. What are Lonnie and Shelley dealing with right now?
Right now, the task is urgent. Shelley, the adjuster, is trying to lock down vendors for asbestos abatement.
On the tile floor.
On the tile floors, yes. And Lonnie is cooperating, which is a good sign. Shelley actually assumed he was locked into their direct repair network, their DRP.
But he's not.
No, he clarifies he's open to suggestions. He just wants it done right.
That flexibility is key. It shows he's not just trying to fight the system, he's trying to get his home safe again.
It is.
Mm.
But while the asbestos is the immediate physical problem, the logistics are just a nightmare.
You're not kidding. This isn't just a quick hotel stay for one person. We're talking about temporary housing for 3 adults, a cat, and 5 dogs.
5 dogs.
Now, to be fair, the adjuster clarifies that most are friends' dogs that Lonnie watches during the week, but that doesn't really change the problem. You still have to find an Airbnb or a suite that allows 8 animals.
Exactly. And that immediate problem, how hard it is to relocate now, it just highlights how impossible it would have been for him to do it back in January when the contamination first happened, with no warning.
A great point. If it's this hard now, imagine trying to scramble when you're being told everything is fine.
Right.
And this brings us right to the contamination evidence, because this is where the insurer's story really starts to fall apart.
It does. Shelley points out that a recent air test for asbestos clearance came back clear.
Which sounds good on the surface.
It does, but Lonnie immediately pushes back. And he's completely right to do so. He's sharp.
What's his argument?
He points out that a clear test now is meaningless for discussing 9 months of past exposure. It just tells you the air is clean at the moment they took the sample.
It says nothing about what it was like back in January or February when the contractor first kicked up all that asbestos dust.
Nothing at all. And then the evidence gets even worse for the insurer. While that one asbestos test is clear, the mold tests, they came back definitively positive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Lonnie points to the hygienist, a company called Axiom, who did a test near the HVAC room. They poked a hole in the living room wall and found a high background density level, a 3.
And what does a 3 mean for us non-experts?
A 3 indicates a high amount of particulates. So this isn't just a little surface mold. This suggests a really pervasive problem, maybe even cycling through the house and the ventilation system, a serious health hazard.
That's terrifying, especially since Lonnie has mentioned he's immunocompromised.
It is. And the adjuster, Shelley, she seems to know things were handled badly. She even admits that she was reprimanded internally.
Reprimanded for what?
For initially paying for a post-clearance mold test that came back positive.
Wait, she got in trouble for finding mold?
She got in trouble for paying for the test that found it. She realized later she should have made the contractor, Phoenix Restoration, pay for it, because they're the ones who were supposed to clear their own work.
So that's a huge admission. It points to a total failure of oversight.
It's gold for the insured. If the insurer's own process says the contractor should ensure safety, then the insurer can't turn around and claim they used due diligence.
And this sets the stage perfectly for the main conflict.
Right.
The 9-month exposure and this idea of retroactive ALE.
Right. Both sides agree on when it started. The ALE coverage was triggered on January 31st.
The day the demolition started?
The day the contractor disturbed the asbestos. That date is not in dispute. but the duration of the coverage. That's the big money argument.
So what's the adjuster's position?
Shelley pulls out the standard policy defense. She argues that ALE should only cover the, shortest amount of time it should have taken for proper abatement.
The theoretical best-case scenario timeline.
Exactly. She's estimating maybe 2 or 3 weeks total.
So she's basically saying, we'll pay for the time it should have taken, not the time it actually took because of our contractor's mistake.
Precisely. And she adds that the policy only pays for a reasonable increase in living expenses. So since Lonnie didn't spend $3,000 a month on rent for the last 9 months,
they owe him nothing for that time.
That's the classic, you didn't incur the expense, so we don't pay defense.
But this is where Lonnie comes back with a powerful counter. He's not just asking, he's demanding retroactive ALE for the full 9 months.
And he's come prepared. He's got the math worked out based on what comparable housing would have cost.
$3,000 a month.
$3,000 a month for housing, plus costs for the pets, all calculated up to his policy limit of $138,000. It's a detailed demand.
What I find so compelling is his logic. He kind of sets this bad faith trap for the adjuster.
He really does. Tell everyone about that analogy. It just dismantles her position.
So, Lonnie asks Shelley, pretty much directly, if relocation is necessary now for the cleanup, especially because I'm immunocompromised, why wasn't it necessary for the 9 months I was living in those exact hazardous conditions?
It's a brilliant question, because by telling him to move now, the insurer is admitting the house was unsafe before.
They're admitting it. They can't argue it wasn't dangerous enough to move for 9 months, but it's suddenly too dangerous to stay for a 3-week cleaning.
It's a spectacular failure of logic on their part. The insurer's contractor created the hazard, and then they failed to tell the insured about the danger and his right to coverage.
So Lonnie's point is, you can't deny me coverage because I didn't incur expenses you never told me I was eligible for in the first place.
You were deprived of the right to safety. That's the core of it.
Okay, let's look at the policy text itself. What does it actually say?
The policy limits ALE to the least of the following time periods. And the key phrase is, the time period required to repair or replace the property we cover, using due diligence and dispatch.
Due diligence and dispatch. That's the whole ballgame right there.
It is. The insurer wants that to mean the theoretical shortest time. But Lonnie is arguing the actual time required is 9 months, because there was a catastrophic failure of diligence.
And when the adjuster, Shelley, realizes this, what does she do?
She tries to deflect immediately. She suggests the 9-month liability should fall on the contractor, Phoenix Restoration.
So she tries to push it onto their liability insurance.
She does. She's passing the buck. But this move is a huge, huge red flag, especially in Missouri.
Okay, let's bring in the law. Why is blaming the contractor a losing argument in Missouri?
Well, because of cases like Miller v. Great American, Missouri law is very clear on this. Insurers are responsible for the actions of the contractors they assign to a job.
So they can't use their own contractor's negligence as an excuse to avoid their own duty to the policyholder.
Exactly. The buck stops with the insurer. They control the claim.
That shuts down that argument pretty fast. So what about her other point, that ALE is limited to the hypothetical time it should have taken?
That's also legally, well, it's incredibly weak in Missouri. Cases like Griffin v. State Farm and Reinhardt v. Shelter, they explicitly reject that idea.
So the courts don't buy the perfect world timeline.
Not at all. The courts look at reality. Coverage is for the actual period the home is uninhabitable because of the covered loss. If the insurer's vendor made the house unlivable for 9 months, then that's the period of loss.
That makes perfect sense. You can't benefit from your own delay.
You can't.
But we still have that incurred expense issue. Shelley is saying no bills, no money. How does the law see that when the insured was kept in the dark?
This is the most critical part and where the insurer is most vulnerable. Missouri law, and it lines up with NAIC standards, says an insurer can't use their own failure to inform you about coverage as a reason to deny payment.
So because they didn't tell him he was in danger and had a right to ALE?
They can't penalize him for not using it. They failed in their duty to explain his rights under the policy. They breached their own contract first.
So Lonnie is just asking to be made whole for the period he was covered, which started back on January 31st.
Absolutely. He's not asking for a windfall. He's asking for the benefit he paid for in his premiums.
And if National General keeps refusing to pay this retroactive amount, what kind of legal risk are they taking on in Missouri?
A big one. They're risking a claim for vexatious refusal to pay.
Vexatious refusal? What does that mean in plain English?
It means the insurer is refusing to pay a legitimate claim without a reasonable basis. They're using frivolous arguments to get out of it.
And what are the penalties for that?
They can be severe. The court can add up to 20% of the claim amount, plus all of Lonnie's attorney's fees. It makes fighting a losing battle very, very expensive for the insurer.
So this deep dive really shows this isn't just about money, it's about the insurer's basic duty to protect their customer, especially when their own vendor creates a health hazard.
That's right. And the strength of Lonnie's arguments, backed by Missouri law, is what forces the adjuster's hand in the end. The conversation closes with Shelley agreeing to review the ALE claim again.
That's a huge concession.
It is. It's her basically saying, okay, our initial arguments won't stand up in court.
Wow, a powerful outcome. This case is a perfect example for anyone listening. The policy demands due diligence and dispatch. If a total lack of diligence turns a 3-week repair into 9 months of hazardous exposure,
Wow.
well, the law has a clear answer about who pays for that mistake.
And it isn't the person who is kept in the dark. The law demands accountability from the entity in control.
And in this case, that's the insurer.
Without a doubt.
You now know exactly how the courts would likely see this. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.